Ada Pearson's arrival on March 14, 1982, marked a joyous occasion for the Pearson family. As the eldest among her 4 siblings, Ada possessed a natural inclination to care for her younger brother Jonathan, as well as her sisters Ashley and Joanna Pearson. Yet Ada's influence extended far beyond her immediate family. Everyone fortunate enough to have crossed paths with Ada described her as a radiant beam of sunshine. Her contagious laughter and quick-witted humor had the power to illuminate even the gloomiest of days. Her heart of gold left an indelible mark on the lives of all who had the privilege of knowing her. She served as a constant wellspring of inspiration and positivity. Upon her graduation from El Capitan High School in California in 2000, Ada embarked on a journey of self-improvement, enrolling in sign language and mathematics courses at Grossmont Community College. Alongside her pursuit of knowledge, Ada's heart found its counterpart in a young man named Michael Plummer, then 20 years old. Their love story unfolded organically, and eventually, Ada moved in with Michael, sharing an apartment on Bancroft Street in San Diego, California. Their union appeared unbreakable, and a bright future beckoned. However, fate had other plans, and tragedy struck unexpectedly, forever altering the course of Ada's promising life. The fateful night of September 4, 2000, would be etched into the annals of tragedy. A frantic call to the police reported gunshots erupting from Michael's apartment, sending officers racing to the scene. What they encountered was a nightmare beyond comprehension. The apartment lay in disarray, and amid the chaos they discovered Ada and Michael sprawled on the living room floor, drenched in pools of crimson. Michael's body bore multiple gunshot wounds beyond salvation, while Ada clung to life, her form riddled with bullets. Tragically, the horror did not end there. 21-month-old Julio Rangel, Michael's nephew, had also fallen victim to the violence, fighting for his own life. Fortunately, Julio's parents had managed to escape unscathed. The neighborhood was left shell-shocked, and authorities grappled to unravel the unsettling puzzle. In a desperate bid to save Ada and Julio, both were rushed to separate hospitals. Yet, the extent of their injuries proved insurmountable, and they succumbed to their wounds shortly after arrival. As detectives relentlessly pieced together the events leading up to this tragedy, a shocking revelation emerged. Mere moments before the gunfire erupted, Michael had ventured next door to procure drugs from a man named Sergio Lopez Contreras. However, upon returning with the drugs, Michael reneged on payment, infuriating the dealer. In a surge of rage, Sergio unleashed a hail of bullets from outside the apartment door, firing a total of 14 rounds into the living room, with devastating consequences. Once the truth behind the murders came to light, detectives were resolute in their determination to bring Sergio to justice. However, the cunning drug dealer recognized the gravity of his predicament and chose to flee the country, escaping to Mexico. His evasion threatened to thwart the relentless pursuit of justice, as detectives speculated about his whereabouts. It was believed he had sought refuge in Tijuana, where he had family ties, but leads grew scarce, and the investigation reached a disheartening impasse. The families of the victims yearned for answers, closure, and justice. Yet, as days turned to weeks and weeks into months, it seemed increasingly unlikely that the perpetrator responsible for this heinous act would face accountability. Their grief was compounded by the knowledge that the individual who had torn their loved ones from them remained at large, seemingly untouched by the law. For 2 agonizing decades, they clung to the fragile hope that justice would eventually prevail, and the perpetrator would be apprehended. Finally, in March 2023, after a protracted period of waiting, long-awaited news arrived. The police announced the arrest of Sergio, the primary suspect in the triple murder case, in Mexico on unrelated charges. While the specifics of his arrest remained undisclosed, this development infused a surge of relief and optimism into the hearts of the victims' families, who had endured years of suffering and uncertainty. At long last, there was a glimmer of hope that closure might be within reach. On March 22, 2023, Sergio, now 44 years old, was escorted across the U.S. border with the assistance of the U.S. Marshals and La Fiscalía General de la República. He was promptly booked into San Diego Central Jail, facing 3 counts of murder, along with special circumstances, including allegations of employing a rifle in the commission of the killings and lying in wait. The courtroom atmosphere brimmed with tension when he was arraigned 2 days later, on March 24, 2023. Appearing via teleconference, Sergio entered a plea of not guilty to the 3 counts of first-degree murder brought against him. The families of the victims, who had endured more than 2 decades of grief, expressed their profound gratitude to the law enforcement officials who had steadfastly pursued the case. With the suspect now in custody, their hopes rested on the legal system to deliver the justice they had yearned for over the years. It was a moment of renewed hope for the families, a glimmer of light piercing through the darkness of their long, painful journey towards closure and justice. Then in 2022, authorities made the decision to revisit the case armed with advanced scientific and investigative tools. Detectives were resolute in their determination to finally bring closure to a case that had plagued them for so long. By developing a DNA profile from evidence collected in 1970, detectives embarked on a new path of investigation. They compared this DNA profile to publicly accessible genealogical databases and embarked on the painstaking task of constructing a family tree. This led them to identify potential relatives of the suspect, a crucial breakthrough in their pursuit of justice. A DNA sample was obtained from one of these relatives, whose identity was kept confidential by the authorities. With bated breath, the DNA sample was tested, and the long-awaited breakthrough finally occurred. The suspect was identified as Forrest Clyde Williams. However, the excitement of this discovery was tempered by a painful realization. Williams had passed away in Salem, Virginia, in 2018 from natural causes. Justice, it seemed, would remain elusive in this case. The bitter pill to swallow was that they had finally found the man responsible, but they could not hold him accountable for his crimes. In a press conference held on March 10, 2023, the police announced this breakthrough in the case. They revealed that Williams, who was 21 years old at the time of Pamela's death, had faced a few minor charges in the early 1970s, but apart from an assault arrest, he had no significant criminal record. The police disclosed that had Williams still been alive, he would have been charged with Pamela's murder. At present, they have not ruled out the possibility of additional suspects and are appealing to anyone who may have known Williams during that time to come forward with information. While justice may remain elusive for Pamela's untimely death, the resolution of her case does bring some closure to her grieving family and the community that has carried the weight of this unsolved mystery for so long. In the quiet town of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, on the chilly day of January 13, 1954, a newborn girl named Pamela took her first breath. She was the eldest of 3 siblings, born to Mr. and Mrs. William Conyers. Pamela's early life remained largely private, but her journey would soon take a remarkable turn. Fast forward to 1970, and Pamela had blossomed into a talented high school student attending Glen Burnie High School in the suburbs of Baltimore. At school, she proudly joined the ranks of the school band, showcasing her exceptional flute-playing skills. Like most teenagers, Pamela cherished her family and friends, eagerly creating unforgettable memories. Life seemed to hold endless possibilities for her. However, as fate would have it, Pamela's life would take an unexpected and dark turn that no one could have foreseen. It was the evening of Friday, October 16, 1970, and the air was electric with anticipation for Glen Burnie High School's homecoming bonfire and pep rally. Pamela was among the enthusiastic crowd, cheering on her school's team and soaking in the festive atmosphere as the night wound down. After the event, Pamela headed back home with excitement brewing in her heart. Her next task was to plan her outfit for the upcoming school dance, and she had a particular idea in mind. She needed shoe dye to match her dress, and her destination was the Harrendale Mall, just a short drive away from her home. Pamela's mother, always supportive of her daughter's fashion choices, handed her $5 for the show day at 8:30 p.m. Pamela left the house promising her mother that she would return shortly. She got into the family's car, a 1966 Dodge, and set off toward the mall. Little did Pamela's parents know that this night would mark the last time they would see their beloved daughter alive. If only they had possessed the foresight to anticipate the harrowing events that lay ahead, they might never have allowed her out of their sight. As the night grew longer, Pamela failed to return home, causing her parents increasing anxiety. It was unlike their daughter to stay out so late. Their worries and concerns deepened, and eventually, they took the painful step of reporting her as missing to the local police. That very night, law enforcement officers sprang into immediate action, determined to unravel the mystery of Pamela's disappearance. Their investigation began by retracing Pamela's steps, commencing with the Herondale Mall, where she had gone to purchase the shoe dye. There, they discovered that she had indeed visited the mall and made her purchase, but what happened afterward remained shrouded in mystery. It was at this point that suspicions of an abduction began to emerge. The following morning, state and county law enforcement launched an extensive search effort, even utilizing a helicopter to cover as much ground as possible. However, it was as though Pamela had vanished into thin air. 2 days later, on October 19, 1970, a man walking in the woods stumbled upon an abandoned vehicle. The car was situated in an overgrown field, about 100 yards off Mountain Road Extension in Pasadena. Recognizing that something was amiss, the man promptly alerted the authorities. When the police arrived at the scene, they confirmed that the car was the same one Pamela had driven on the night she went missing. Yet, there was no sign of Pamela herself, and a crucial detail captured their attention. The car keys were nowhere to be found. This new piece of evidence deepened the mysteries surrounding Pamela's disappearance. As dawn broke on October 20, 1970, the search for Pamela intensified as officers scoured the densely wooded area around where her abandoned car had been discovered. Among the officers present was Patrol Officer Robert Switzer, who would make a gruesome discovery. Pamela's lifeless body lay on her side, off a deserted farm road. She was dressed in slacks and a pullover which had been turned inside out. It was later revealed that her underwear was missing. As additional officers arrived at the scene, they were overwhelmed by shock and sorrow. They diligently collected as much evidence as possible from the crime scene, and Pamela's body was transported for autopsy. The news of Pamela's death sent shockwaves of grief through her family. The autopsy results confirmed that she had died from strangulation, leaving no doubt that her death was a homicide. The hunt for her killer began in earnest, with detectives tirelessly following every lead that came their way. Pamela's clothing, along with soil and dirt samples vacuumed from the 1966 Dodge, were sent to the FBI crime lab in Washington for analysis. Regrettably, the technology available at the time proved insufficient to yield any leads, and as time passed, the case grew cold. The unsolved murder case remained a haunting presence for the investigators, a stark reminder of a tragedy that had eluded justice for over 5 decades. Boulder County, Colorado, is renowned for its breathtaking natural beauty, with the majestic Rocky Mountains gracing the backdrop of Boulder City and the neighboring towns. This region is undeniably a unique and inspiring place to call home, but even amidst its serene charm, it harbors unsettling secrets. On June 4, 2006, 2 hikers stumbled upon a grisly discovery in South St. Frame Canyon, along Highway 7, approximately 3.3 miles outside the town of Lyons, in unincorporated Boulder County, a badly decomposing nude body. The shock of their find prompted them to alert the authorities, setting in motion a dark and mysterious tale. Upon the arrival of law enforcement, it became evident that the human remains belonged to a woman. The district attorney's office noted that the body seemed to have been dragged to the location by a large animal from a shallow grave situated 20 feet away. Curiously, detectives uncovered a sleeping bag, a pair of yellow ski pants, and a pillow inside a pillowcase, all neatly folded. The deceased woman had no identification on her, except for a cross ring adorning her left hand. Given the advanced state of decomposition, identifying her proved impossible. Therefore, investigators turned to other clues found on and around the body, delving approximately 14 inches deep into the gravesite. During their examination, forensic experts uncovered roughly 50 pounds of a white, powdery substance, which subsequent tests revealed to be calcium oxide, commonly known as quicklime. An autopsy, conducted by a coroner 3 days after the shocking discovery, estimated that the woman had been deceased for several weeks to possibly several months. However, the cause and manner of her death remained elusive. While her body bore evidence of animal predation, no broken bones, stab wounds, or gunshot wounds were found. Strangulation was considered a possibility, but the advanced decomposition offered no certainty, and the pathologist could not find conclusive evidence during the autopsy to support a homicide. Instead, an artery blockage hinted at a potential death from a heart attack. Nonetheless, detectives retained their suspicions and continued to consider foul play. The circumstances surrounding the victim's burial before her body was dragged to its exposed state left investigators with a dearth of leads. Their desire for closure, both for the woman who had lost her life under these mysterious circumstances and for justice, remained unfulfilled. Initial inquiries within Boulder County's residence yielded no fruitful tips, leaving the victim unidentified for several months. It was only in the fall of that year that a significant breakthrough occurred. In October 2006, a woman contacted the Longmont Police Department, expressing concern about her long unseen friend, Angie Wilder, whom she had been unable to contact. The missing friend's physical description closely matched that of the remains found in the canyon a few months earlier. Additionally, the woman mentioned a distinctive ring that her friend was known to wear, similar to the cross ring found on the victim. With this crucial information, investigators were able to identify the missing woman as Angela Wilds. In November 2006, she was officially identified as Angela Josephine Wilds through a DNA analysis on the rib bones, comparing them to those of her 4 sisters. Angela was 38 years old when she lost her life. Curiously, none of Angela's family members had reported her missing or conducted further investigations into her disappearance. Detectives learned that around the time she vanished in April 2006, she lacked a stable home or steady employment. Her life revolved around living with friends, but beyond this, investigators had little information to work with. Despite interviewing Angela's family, friends, and acquaintances, investigators remained no closer to unraveling the mystery of her fate. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they conducted DNA tests on the items discovered with Angela. These tests revealed the presence of unknown male DNA on the ski pants, sleeping bag, and pillowcase. However, it would take 3 more years to identify the contributor of this male DNA. On January 22, 2009, information reached investigators working on Angela's case from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI, indicating a preliminary match between the suspect's DNA and a man named John Michael Ankerer, who was incarcerated at a correctional center in Palmer, Alaska. 2 months later, in March 2009, investigators traveled to Alaska and collected additional DNA samples from Ankerer, further solidifying their suspicions. On February 24, 2009, detectives from the Anchorage, Alaska Police Department took John Michael Ankerer into custody on a warrant issued by the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, charging him with the 2006 murder of Angela Wilds. As investigators sought to establish the connection between Angela and Ankerer, they managed to locate several individuals who claimed to have seen them together in late 2005 and early 2006. On August 26, 2009, a detective from the Anchorage Police Department conducted a formal interview with Ankerer. In this interview, Ankerer recounted attending a dive school in Texas in February or March of 2006 and subsequently living in various Colorado locations, including Canyon City, Longmont, and Monte Vista, until July 2006. He stated that he moved to Alaska in August of that year. Curiously, Ankerer denied any knowledge of a person named Angie or Angela, and when shown her photograph, he maintained that he did not recognize her, failing to provide a confession or substantial information. Despite the initial challenges, investigators persisted. In September 2009, they re-interviewed Ankerer, who again denied knowing the victim. He also denied being in the South St. Francis area around the time of the crime. However, his own family members contradicted his claims. Ankerer's parents reported that he frequently visited a cave in the South St. Francis area, located off Highway 7, approximately 3 to 4 miles from Lyons. He hiked and camped in the vicinity, and his sister recalled dropping him off there on occasion. In March 2010, investigators issued a court-authorized arrest warrant for second-degree murder charges against Angela Wilds. At the time, Ankerer was already incarcerated in an Alaska prison on a probation violation charge. Ankerer's preliminary hearing took place in the Boulder City Court on July 12, 2010. While the evidence pointed to him, including DNA evidence and witness testimonies, it fell short of conclusively placing him at the crime scene. Prosecutors also struggled to establish a motive behind the killing. Ankerer's defense attorney argued that there was no physical evidence directly implicating Ankerer in Angela's death, especially considering the pathologist's inability to definitively declare it a homicide. Judge Thomas Reed, after considering the evidence, determined that probable cause did not sufficiently support the charge and subsequently dismissed the case. Despite this setback, detectives remained determined to solve the case. Over the years, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office continued their relentless efforts, collaborating with the Colorado Bureau of Investigación and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. These efforts included conducting interviews with various individuals and consulting with pathologists. In 2005, a pathologist reevaluated the case, concluding that Angela's death should be considered a homicide due to the circumstances surrounding her discovery, a nude body covered in lime in a remote wooded area. Although the specifics of her death remained uncertain, asphyxiation emerged as the most probable cause. Nevertheless, this evidence alone was insufficient to hold the suspect accountable for the victim's death. Several years later, in December 2022, a new witness emerged, altering the course of the investigation dramatically. This witness happened to be Ankerer's former girlfriend, who had separated from him between December 2022 and January 2023. In subsequent interviews, she revealed disturbing details about Ankerer's past, describing him as extremely jealous, possessive, and prone to mistreatment. She believed that he suspected her of infidelity and claimed that he had repeatedly strangled her during their relationship. However, when initially questioned in 2009, she had denied being strangled. Moreover, she believed that Ankerer harbored dark secrets, becoming particularly unstable and violent when consuming alcohol or drugs. The mention of certain women's names, including Angela, triggered his rage. In December 2022, detectives also contacted 2 other witnesses who claimed to have seen Ankerer with Angela at the El Motel in Longmont, Colorado, a mere 10 miles from the South St. Francis Canyon crime scene. When examining the motel records, investigators confirmed that Angela and Ankerer had stayed there together between December 26 and January 4, 2006. Based on the accumulating evidence, both new and existing, the Boulder County District Attorney's Office presented the case to a grand jury on February 16, 2023. The grand jury subsequently indicted John Ankerer once again, this time for second-degree murder. Investigators now hold confidence that justice will finally be served in this disturbing case. Boulder County District Attorney Michael Dougherty expressed their determination to secure justice for Angela Wilds' murder, offer closure to her loved ones, and provide answers to the community. On March 9, 2023, John Ankerer, now 53 years old, was arrested in Anchorage, Alaska, and extradition to Boulder City is currently pending, marking a significant step toward resolving the mysteries that have shrouded this case for far too long. A group of kids playing off of Amherst Street in Granby, Massachusetts, found a woman's body on November 15, 1978, buried under a pile of leaves. Investigators were able to determine that she had been fatally shot in the temple. There was also evidence that the woman's body was dragged by a man's belt, It was estimated that her life was taken roughly 3 months before her body was found in August 1978. Investigators were unfortunately unable to identify the woman, so for decades she became known as a grandma's girl and was buried in a local cemetery with a headstone marked unknown on March 6, 2023. The office held a news conference at the Granny police station to announce the major breakthrough in the case. It was announced that the remains found back in 1978 belonged to 28-year-old Patricia Tucker. She was born on July 28, 1950. First Assistant District Attorney Stephen G. said advances in DNA technology allowed them to find Patricia's half-sister in Maryland, who led them to her son. He was just 5 years old when Patricia vanished. Stephen Gagne said that while it is satisfying to finally know who the Granby girl actually was, the investigation will not stop until we identify the person who took her life and bring the family an additional measure of closure and justice. This investigation has spanned decades and will continue until each and every possible lead is explored. Stephen G. said Patricia was married to Gerald Coleman, and they were living on the shore of Lake Pecog in East Hampton, Connecticut, back in 1978. Coleman never reported his wife missing. He passed away in prison in Massachusetts in 1996, according to Stephen Gaynor. Coleman is now a person of interest in Patricia's case. Patricia had earlier gone by her married name, Patricia Heckman, Patricia Dale, and later Patricia Coleman, at the time of her disappearance. Anyone with information about the case should call Granby Police at 413-467-9222 or email jwhite@pd.org. Patricia's son, Matthew Dale, who is now 50 years old, also spoke and recalled his last memories of his mother. She was in the front seat of a stranger's car wearing a vest. It was 1978. Matthew was in the back seat on Nubby Upholstery. A man he did not know was driving, but Matthew vividly recalls the last words his mother ever said to him before she disappeared. She told me to go across the street to the playground. Matthew said, referring to a group home for juveniles, she said goodbye. Now in middle age, Matthew's memories are fuzzy. The facility was outside Boston. His father collected him the following day and raised him after his mother left him. Matthew has lived in North Carolina most of his life. He grew up dogged by the mystery of his mother's disappearance. Rumors swirled among family members, including speculation that Patricia may have entered the Federal Witness Protection Program. Matthew said that he was in his 30s when he accepted that his mother was no longer alive. My mother fell in with the wrong crowd. She was not a hiker like some of the stories said. Through the years, I've been told so many lies about it. His father passed away in 2015, and Dale has felt somewhat of adrift, although he is happily married, is a father, and has been a union electrician. For most of his life, several weeks before the identification was made, police showed up at his door. They asked him a few questions, explaining that they found him through his uncle in a DNA database. They said, "Grandma girl." I thought, what is a Ramby girl? Matthew said state police investigators did not offer many details, but said they had exhumed Patricia's body. Matthew had filed his DNA in a database in case his mother was ever identified. He sent investigators a file of his digital DNA profile, and they contacted him by phone within hours. He said it was a clear genetic match. He has scant keepsakes of his mom, a single photo baby book she created for him, a lock of his hair, and a small tapestry she painted when he was small. Matthew said he plans to arrange for a proper grave for his mother for years. The grave has been marked only with a wooden cross since 1998. Gry residents donated money to create a more dignified marker. Matthew said it was an awful end. What I want to do is have a new gravestone made for her. She deserves to have her name on it. Amanda Gonzalez came into this world on December 8, 1981, born to Santos Gonzalez and Gloria Bates. Her early years were marked by the separation of her parents, a situation clouded in mystery. In due course, Gloria remarried a man named Michael Bates, who would step into the role of a father figure for Amanda when she was just 4 years old. Michael, hailing from Madisonville, Texas, watched Amanda grow into a popular girl with a heart of gold. Known for her kindness and her unwavering stand against bullies on behalf of her classmates, Amanda graduated from Madisonville High School in the year 2000. A turning point came when, after her high school graduation, Amanda surprised her family with a life-altering decision. She arrived home with a recruiter, announcing her intention to enlist in the U.S. Army. Her dream was to become a physical therapist for children, and she saw the Army as a means to save up for college. Amanda's family supported her decision, though little did they know the heart-wrenching consequences that lay ahead. With her family's blessings, Amanda embarked on a path that would take her to places she had never imagined. It was the year 2001, and at the age of 19, she found herself stationed in Hanau, Germany. Assigned the role of a cook, Amanda worked diligently, but she also made it a point to explore the cultural wonders of the country in her spare time. She marveled at majestic castles and got lost in the enchanting city of Paris. Europe held countless experiences for her. Several months into her service, Amanda made an unexpected call to her mother back in Texas. The news she delivered was filled with excitement. She was pregnant and eagerly looking forward to the new chapter in her life. Amanda planned to name her baby Alicia Marie, with an estimated delivery date of March 26, 2002. However, the identity of the unborn child's father remained a mystery, one that persists to this day. Amanda's life seemed to be on an upswing. She had a promising future ahead. But fate had a cruel twist in store. On November 5, 2001, a day that began like any other in Hanover, Germany, Amanda inexplicably vanished. Her absence raised alarm among her fellow soldiers, and a search was launched. They arrived at her barracks, only to find her room locked. Fearful of the worst, they forced their way in and discovered Amanda's lifeless body on the floor. Panic engulfed them as they desperately tried to revive her, but their efforts were in vain. The news of Amanda's death spread rapidly, sending shockwaves through the Army base. The autopsy report revealed the grim truth: Amanda had been strangled to death. This devastating news reverberated all the way to Texas, leaving Amanda's loved ones with a multitude of unanswered questions. Why would anyone want to harm Amanda? An investigation was launched, but despite the dedicated efforts of the authorities, the case went cold. There were no leads, no suspects, and no justice for Amanda. It was a heartbreaking end to a life that had held so much promise. Despite the investigation into her daughter's murder stalling for several years, Gloria, Amanda's mother, never lost faith in justice. She spent years reaching out to lawmakers, and even wrote to popular TV shows like Dr. Phil and America's Most Wanted, all in an effort to keep Amanda's case in the public eye. Gloria's unwavering determination extended to her visits to Amanda's grave, where she often spoke to her deceased daughter, vowing to keep fighting. In 2011, a ray of hope emerged when Army investigators offered a reward of $125,000 for any information that could help solve the case. However, still, no breakthrough came. Gloria received weekly updates from investigators, each containing the same disheartening news: no suspects had been identified. Finally, after 22 years of waiting, perseverance paid off. On February 23, 2023, an FBI agent informed Gloria that there had been a breakthrough in the case and that an arrest had been made. This day marked a significant step closer to the justice Amanda deserved. The individual taken into custody was Shannon L. Wilkerson, a 42-year-old former Armed Forces member. The arrest was the result of a collaborative effort between the FBI Jacksonville Office of Special Investigations, and the Army Criminal Investigation Division. Wilkerson was charged under the Military Extraterrestrial Jurisdiction Act, which grants U.S. courts jurisdiction over former members of the armed forces for crimes committed overseas. The exact details of how investigators linked Wilkerson to the murder and what his possible motive might have been remain unclear. Nevertheless, he pleaded not guilty to the first-degree murder charge against him, and if convicted, he could face life imprisonment. Interestingly, it came to light that Wilkerson had even attended a memorial service for Amanda at the Army base in Germany after her death. The future remains uncertain, but for Gloria and her family, The arrest of Amanda's alleged killer provides a sense of justice and closure that they've been yearning for over 2 decades. On a cold and eerie night, as the clock struck midnight on November 21, 2002, the small town of Spanaway, Washington, became the backdrop for a chilling discovery that would haunt both the community and law enforcement for years to come. In the desolate 15600 block of 74th Avenue East, a lifeless body lay motionless, stripped of all clothing. It was a scene that sent shivers down the spines of the police officers who rushed to the location, their veins filled with tension and uncertainty. The tension in the air was palpable as the officers arrived at the scene, not knowing what to expect. The sight that greeted them was beyond their worst nightmares. The woman's life had met a gruesome and inexplicable end, leaving them with a bone-chilling question that would drive their investigation. Who was she, and what dark circumstances had led to her demise? Despite the initial shock and the absence of immediate clues, the detectives were resolute in their determination to uncover the truth. They meticulously combed every inch of the surrounding area, searching for any shred of evidence that could provide them with the answers they so desperately sought. However, the scene remained eerily silent, offering no hints as to the sinister events that had unfolded there. One peculiar detail that struck the investigators was the absence of any visible marks or signs of violence on the victim's body. This observation led them to believe that the woman had likely met her fate elsewhere and had been unceremoniously dumped on the side of the road. As the woman's lifeless form was carefully transported away from the grim scene, the detectives stood in stoic silence, their faces etched with fierce determination. Their minds raced with thoughts of the arduous investigation that lay ahead as they plotted their next moves. It was a solemn vow they made to themselves and the memory of the victim. They would not rest until every stone had been turned, every lead had been followed, and the elusive culprit brought to justice. The subsequent autopsy conducted on the woman would reveal a horrifying truth. She had been strangled to death, but the Pierce County Medical Examiner's Office was not content with just this revelation. Recognizing the critical importance of every possible clue in solving a case of this magnitude, they took a DNA sample from the victim's body. Furthermore, through the careful examination of fingerprints, the Pierce County Medical Examiner's Office was able to identify the woman. Her name was Sharon Van Gilder, a 39-year-old devoted mother of 2 children and a beloved member of her community. Sharon had grown up in Enumclaw, surrounded by several siblings, but little was known about her early life. Those who had the privilege of knowing her described Sharon as a kind and caring person, always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. Her tragic and inexplicable death left a profound void in the lives of all who had known her. The shock of her passing rippled through her community, leaving her friends and neighbors in disbelief. As the investigation into Sharon's death unfolded, detectives were met with more questions than answers. However, they were determined to crack the case and provide Sharon's grieving family with the justice they so rightfully deserved. As they delved deeper into their investigation, they uncovered a crucial piece of information. Sharon had been last seen leaving a bar in Tacoma with a man named Miguel Angel Urbano Vasquez. This discovery immediately placed Miguel under the intense scrutiny of law enforcement, making him a prime suspect in the case. The authorities launched an all-out effort to locate and apprehend him. Simultaneously, the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab worked tirelessly to gather additional evidence, including DNA samples taken from the crime scene. These samples were destined to play a pivotal role in the unfolding drama. However, capturing Miguel proved to be a daunting task, and he managed to evade the authorities, escaping to Mexico just as they were closing in on him. Despite their best efforts, detectives were unable to track him down. As time passed, the investigation ran dry and the case went cold, leaving Sharon's loved ones with heavy hearts and no closure. Meanwhile, Miguel continued to live his life freely, seemingly oblivious to the relentless pursuit of justice that was never going to give up on finding him. But the story was far from over. In 2012, a glimmer of hope emerged for the investigators when the Pierce County Sheriff's Department established a cold case unit. A dedicated and determined detective named Tim Cobble took over Sharon's murder case. Tim threw himself into the investigation with unwavering resolve, determined to solve the mystery that had remained unsolved for years. During his painstaking probe, Detective Tim made a shocking discovery. It was a revelation that sent shockwaves through the Tacoma community. A series of crimes had occurred around the same time as Sharon's murder, and the same man was connected to all of them: Miguel. Astonishingly, the Tacoma detectives who had been working on those cases had no idea about Miguel's connection to Sharon's murder. This critical oversight had resulted in a missed opportunity to submit DNA evidence from the crime lab for comparison to its database. Detective Tim felt like he had finally found the missing puzzle piece, and he wasted no time. He sent the DNA samples from Sharon's murder, as well as those from the other two crimes, for testing. The results that finally arrived in late April 2012 confirmed what he had suspected all along: Miguel was the perpetrator behind all three heinous crimes. But the investigation didn't stop there. Months later, detectives were able to link Miguel to yet another crime that had occurred in October 2002. The victim recounted a harrowing tale of being lured into a car with two individuals who initially offered her drugs. However, when she refused their proposition of exchanging money for sexual acts, they turned violent, resorting to physical force. DNA samples taken from this crime scene matched those found at the two earlier crimes and in Sharon's murder. It was a breakthrough moment that investigators had been tirelessly working towards for years. After a long and arduous journey filled with twists and turns, they had finally gathered enough evidence to charge Miguel with the murder of Sharon Van Gilder, as well as the other crimes that had terrorized Tacoma. With charges filed by the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office and a warrant issued for Miguel's arrest, the detectives faced another formidable challenge. They had no idea where Miguel was hiding in Mexico. The search for the fugitive suspect became intense and challenging, but the detectives refused to give up. Their eyes remained peeled, their ears to the ground, and their determination unwavering. As days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, the detectives were on the brink of losing hope. But then, in 2019, a glimmer of hope emerged when the FBI informed them of Miguel's whereabouts. Determined to see him face justice, the detectives sprang into action, embarking on the lengthy process of securing the necessary paperwork to extradite him to the United States. The extradition process was long and arduous, filled with bureaucratic hurdles and legal intricacies. However, the detectives refused to yield, driven by their unwavering commitment to justice. Finally, after 4 years of tenacious struggle, the necessary paperwork was processed. Working in collaboration with Mexican authorities, the FBI executed Miguel's arrest on March 14, 2023, bringing an end to his years on the run. Miguel's capture marked a significant turning point in the long and arduous journey for justice that had begun over 2 decades earlier. At this moment, detectives continue to work tirelessly to finalize Miguel's extradition to Washington, where he will stand trial for his heinous crimes. His arrest has brought a renewed sense of hope and closure to Sharon's family and friends, who had endured years of anguish, uncertainty, and heartache. In conclusion, the tragic story of Sharon Van Gilder's murder is a testament to the relentless determination of law enforcement, forensic experts, and detectives who refuse to give up in their pursuit of justice. The case serves as a reminder that even the most elusive criminals cannot evade the long arm of the law indefinitely, and that perseverance and dedication can ultimately bring closure to those who have suffered the most profound loss. On June 27, 1983, sheriff's deputies were summoned to Rohnert Park, an unincorporated community located 50 miles northeast of San Francisco, due to a reported theft from within its borders. 7-year-old boys found the body of a woman inside an office of real estate on Petaluma Hill Road and East Coda Avenue at their intersection. When police arrived, they discovered that she had been fatally wounded with wood from a pile of timber in the office. Officers quickly collected evidence at the scene and stored it until later use by police, who quickly identified Noel Russo as 37-year-old victim, last seen 3 days prior to her body being discovered on June 24, 1983 by friends. Noel had recently engaged in an altercation with one of her partners before being found deceased 3 days later on June 24, 1983. Noel had been staying with one of her friends on the streets of Santa Rosa, California that evening, when their friend took them towards Courthouse Square, where Noel planned to board an Golden Gate Transit bus back home in Rohnert Park, but instead vanished altogether. Detectives began tracking Noel's past events. She was raised in San Mo County and gained national fame by winning Miss Burlingame when she was only 16 years old. According to the San Mateo Times, her aspiration was to become a model, with dancing, the twist being her favorite activity. "I was shocked that this bubbly teenager won. They said they entered only to please their mother." Noel can be seen smiling broadly in the accompanying photograph and holding out her arms adorned with roses. Over the next 20 years, she was divorced twice, married twice more, and gave birth to an infant son. She worked as a ranger trainer in Colorado before returning home to Santa Rosa Junior College in California and enrolling as a student. At the time, she lived in an apartment on Avon Avenue in Rohnert Park with her 18-year-old son Noel, planning on moving toward Boys Hot Springs with him as her final destination. Noel loved cycling around town. Noel would often hitch rides, prompting some of her friends to worry that she may be too trusting of strangers. Investigators believe she did not use an expressway back home. Rather, it appears she met someone prior to when her bus arrived in Rohnert Park. After Noel was murdered on June 24, 1983, police used an artist to sketch her wearing the clothing that she wore that day and distributed this artwork in order to find leads and establish suspects. Detectives and deputies gathered considerable evidence during this investigation and conducted multiple interviews. Over time, certain people became of particular interest. However, no arrests were ever made, and thus this investigation was concluded with no arrests being made or charges laid against any individuals identified as such. In 2010, the sheriff's office reopened this case, and for the next 12-plus years, investigators began using DNA analysis and then submitted numerous pieces of evidence to Santa Clara County Crime Lab. Officials announced in a press release that 65-year-old Alfredo Carrero Jr. had been arrested on October 2, 2023, and charged with killing Noel Russo. Sheriff Rob Dillon noted Russo's family had been informed of Carrero Jr.'s arrest and expressed appreciation for Carrero Jr.'s privacy during their detention process. Investigators immediately targeted Noel as one of their primary subjects of investigation. According to the sheriff's office, they believed he was aged in his late 20s at the time of incident and confirmed he was indeed responsible. Carrero Jr. has been detained on DNA evidence and other sources, without bail being set in his case. Rob Dillon noted that throughout this investigation, detectives worked closely together with Sonoma County District Attorney's Office. Note that both the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office are committed to justice for victims regardless of when or how the incident took place. VCI team continues to investigate multiple cases of insolvency and seek justice for victims of violent crime. Alfredo Carrero Jr. is scheduled to appear before a judge on October 18, 2023. Investigators have yet to ascertain if Noel knew anyone related to her former flames. However, they are investigating the possibility that Noel may have known them all along. Authorities have not provided details about Keogh other than his conviction in 1995 and 2001 in Sonoma County for property theft, as well as possessing illegal drugs, respectively. Court records also reveal that Keogh was involved in a civil domestic violence case 2 years after Noel died, 2 women of whom Noel counted among his closest acquaintances and friends. She recalls their time together when they lived in San Francisco. Bar hopping was something they enjoyed doing together, like many others in the area. This is apparently what they were up to before she disappeared, before their relationship broke apart and they eventually separated, she stated. Noel had not realized it when they left. However, when they did split up at night and Noel couldn't reach her for most of the day. Later that day they found Noel and made a discovery, which brought great remorse for Noel's mother for quite some time after. "My mother admitted enough about her friend being killed that she kept a diary and frequently wrote about her in it. My mother clearly expressed how beautiful and important this woman was to her, something which came through in her writings. It showed my mother's sense of loss over losing someone she cared deeply about and was devastated about losing them. 28-year-old Terry Ladwig lived in Concord, California in 1994. She was married to Navy Petty Officer Stephen Ladwig. On December 2, 1994, Terry was beaten and strangled in the apartment she shared with her husband on Adelaide Street in Concord. Stephen Ladwig found Terry's body after returning from a tour of duty aboard the USS Parch submarine. Stephen Ladwig was never a suspect in her demise, and no suspects were named by the police at the time. Forensic evidence was taken from the apartment, and the only other lead investigators had was that there was no sign of forced entry. This possibly meant that Terry knew her attacker. Investigators were unable to identify a suspect, and the case went cold. On January 27, 2023, 55-year-old James Grimley was arrested in Salt Lake City, Utah, and charged with taking Terry Ladwig's life. Originally from Oregon, Grimley was employed as a trucker in Salt Lake City at the time of his arrest. "We are not certain of the motive," Concord Police Lieutenant Shaw Donnelly said. "There was no sign of forced entry, and we can presume that the victim led him into the apartment. I can tell you it was a violent scene. It looked like there was a violent struggle between Terry and the suspect. There was forensic evidence obtained from the scene, along with many interviews conducted at the time of the initial investigation," Donnelly said. "However, at this point we are not going to state the exact connection. That information may come from the district attorney's office or U.S. after the arraignment." Grimsley was booked into jail in Salt Lake County on a $1 million warrant and was subsequently extradited to Contra Costa County. One of Terry's friends, Brittany Shez, had this to say after news of the arrest was made public. "She was a great woman. She had a great personality. She made people laugh and would brighten my day when she came in." Jeremy Stoner was born in California on 16th of July 1980 as one of 3 siblings, Jason, Joshua, and Justin being his older brothers. Growing up within Vallejo was beautiful in its own way, Jason being especially energetic, loving both family and friends as he attended school regularly, while riding his bicycle to school while also playing with toys and watching cartoons. Jason boasting an exceptional smile with a large heart, both qualities which Jeremy shared as well. On 21st February 1987, at 6 years old, Jeremy was playing outside when tragedy struck, yet again. On this Saturday morning, 21st February 1987, 6-year-old Jeremy was playing outside when tragedy struck, in Vallejo. Jeremy was playing outside with his 2 brothers aged 9 and 11 near their house when their parents went back to work, being cared for by an auntie while their parents worked. This auntie abruptly had to leave abruptly in order to transport their sick daughter to an emergency room, instructing the boys not to go anywhere until their parents returned. Instead, they went over the neighbor's house where one neighbor reprimanded Jemmy for spilling ketchup before sending him home again at 4:00 p.m. when his mom came back home. At first, she assumed her boys had played with neighbors as they usually do. However, 2 hours after returning with him, Jeremy wasn't found anywhere. Vallejo police quickly learned Jeremy had been taken and believed his last known sighting occurred at Dairy Queen on Springs Road, just 5 minutes away. An employee there informed investigators they saw an adult male accompanied by Jeremy at about 7:30 p.m. that evening. 4 days later, on February 25th, 1987. On Sherman Island in Sacramento County, 4 motorists became stuck in the mud and stopped to look for something between their tires. Instead, she found Jeremy's body, assaulted by a group of thugs with stabbing wounds and strangulation injuries. As soon as police learned of this discovery, they quickly arrived on site to gather as much evidence as they could before storing it for later use. News quickly spread throughout Vallejo of what had happened, leaving residents shocked and upset about what had occurred to Jeremy Stoner. People sympathized with his family members and wanted to help in any way they could, sending cards, flowers, and even hugs as support, looking for him who had disappeared, holding candlelight vigils in honor of this man while offering prayers for both him and his loved ones. Vallejo Mayor Terry Cura stated that Vallejo residents played an integral part in supporting Stoner family during 4 days prior to his passing away. Residents cried, prayed, and offered prayers on his behalf for 4 days prior to his passing away. A few short years after this tragic event took place, Vallejo residents grieved as soon after this news broke about this incident that the residents cried, prayed, offered prayers as it happened, and offered prayers before offering prayers on their behalf, and offered prayers on his behalf and offered prayers on his behalf during those 4 days, when his death took place just days later, when it all happened too soon after Stoner family tragedy occurred, and it all unfolded, tragically ended in 4 days from time of course of Terry Cura, who stated Vallejo residents being an integral part of Stoner family during that period, and offered prayers on their behalf during that short 4-day period, ended up playing their final role before Terry Cura officially stated they offered prayers, and gave prayers before being killed himself by police forces, before finally calling him for help, for prayers over 4 days, before finally joined upholding him until finally lost cause that day, and offered prayers while Terry Cura stated Valle became mayor a few days before leaving Valed. It all too quickly before people knew where it all stopped, until Terry Cura himself stated, just 4 days apart when all involved. It didn't 4 day, but not long. Terry Cura stated it only 4. It just days when Valle for 4 as mayor. Valle cried their integral part in 4 days out their final. He stated them off on Terry Cura confirmed the statement regarding him later. Then Terry Cura himself stated, it all were included within 4th. It soon. It quickly. And then had left Valle had offered prayers for 4 day when Valle did finally left. Valle was his passing away. Left Valle had his death. It soon turned off too soon. Too soon took too soon. He knew then it all soon became ceased. It just never had left this time that his statement about them to long enough. Because Valle, it became part. It didn't mayor Terry Cura's mayor. As mayor Terry Cura as one finally became part 4. It soon afterwards until after 4 days, but also, it only 4, until Terry Cura. It only 4 days. It long when Terry Cura too. But long when Stoner family and Valle until then it too. Until then was time too. It wasn't long, but soon. Its mayor Terry Cura later removed himself reaffirmed once more than it wasn't turn. Soon enough time until Valle's only went, but only 4. But only long. It had long, until it too long, though before residents became in another family. Unfortunately before long too. Which also stated how long before residents became officially announced. Until last, and before soon, before too sadly past. But eventually, long, it's next. It became his turn. Soon too, until eventually passed for Valle as long as that. He remembered. Shaw Quincy Melton was arrested after coming directly to Vallejo Police Department approximately 1 week after Jeremy died, and confessed that he might possess details regarding Jeremy's case, based on self-admitted details about himself. Melton wanted to impress detectives with his amateur investigations by showing them his amateur detective skills. In other words, impress them enough so he could become one. But footage from Melton's interrogation revealed his gradual transformation from charming investigator to confused criminal suspect, with turbulent background history and unpredictable mental state, shown through his behavior during interrogation sessions, revealing more erratic mental state traits in which Melton's face showed. Sean Melton wrote The Wolf's Den, a story about child abuse. Although he claimed it to be fiction, some believed it may have been inspired by personal experiences he'd had. Melton visited the police station to share information regarding this case. He reported hearing of rumors and seeing certain events that could aid them in searching for the culprit. But police suspected Melton of involvement due to valid grounds. Prior to visiting, Sean Melton had informed authorities and informed them about his confession of disturbing fantasies regarding young boys, raising concerns regarding risk posed by him as possible link between this confession and Jeremy Stoner's case. Police conducted a comprehensive 30-hour interrogation, asking various questions as well as administering polygraph exams, sketched pictures of his body, compared it against that of witnesses during this process. Abductors' purpose was to obtain more information about Sean Melton and possibly ascertain his involvement in the incident. Melton denied any knowledge of what had happened, passed the polygraph test without incident, and claimed his sketch didn't correspond with witness descriptions, all while insisting his only purpose was assisting police solve their mystery. Unfortunately, police continued searching for Sean Melton with an entirely new theory in mind, suggesting he may be hiding in plain sight all along. Sean Melton was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. They hypothesized that one of his alter egos, known as John Wolfe, may have committed the crime, while Sean himself did not remember any details surrounding it. Authorities took custody of Sean and charged him with kidnapping and killing of Jeremy. However, neither trial managed to produce enough evidence supporting this conviction, resulting in disqualification by the judge, and Sean eventually being freed from custody by himself. Melton died in 2000 without admitting his involvement in Jeremy Stoner's death, and it remained an unsolved case until 2023, when DNA tests provided new clues and proof that allowed police to reopen it. DNA is an involuntary trait found inside every human being that helps identify them through unique genetic codes that exist inside our cells. This new technology provided another breakthrough and an entirely new direction in which to investigate Jeremy Stoner. Police employed DNA tests on samples taken from Jeremy's body and those found in their criminal database in order to shed new light on his tragic case. Police soon identified an underlying pattern, leading them to suspect Fred Marin Kane III, age 69, detained at his Central Point residence by Oregon District Attorney Krishna Abram, and eventually detained there as well. Kane's identity will likely come up during further investigations of his case, said Abram, who added, "I am deeply thankful that Oregon District Attorney Krishna Abram provided such vigorous guidance throughout his case." Oregon District Attorney Krishna Abram said, "I am tremendously grateful that we now know who did what we know, and that we know who this time." Investigators remained relentless in their dedication to solving these gruesome cases. According to reports from 1984 in the media, Kane, who at that point was age 30 at the time, was accused of attacking a 17-year-old girl within San Bernardino County using a knife. Kane, along with his roommate, were later arrested and charged with forcible attack and use of an enhanced weapon, but were found innocent during trial later in 1984. Solano County District Attorney's Office issued a statement declaring it an open investigation, saying it would open investigation. Due to ongoing investigations, no further details are being released at this time. However, Kane's arrest likely caught both police and Martinez's attention since its start. Eric Coy's disappearance was widely discussed shortly before it occurred in late January 1987, only 1 month prior. Eric would frequently ride between Martinez's home and that of family member. Eric left home at 11 a.m. Hopes were held out that he'd call, as was often done upon reaching his family home, which was only blocks away. When no call came through, search began in earnest until eventually his body was discovered near Martinez Junior High School, having been stabbed multiple times and succumbing to its wounds. Eric Kane's case remains open at present, and anyone with information should reach out to the District Attorney's Cold Case Unit of Solano County at 707-784-48477 as soon as they are aware. Kane was the first individual who appeared before a judge for trial in Solano County courtrooms on September 28, 2023. Family members, including Jeremy Stoner's mother Karen Tabler, were in court as Kane was brought before it for prosecution. Karen stated, "I don't know whether it's relief or feeling unwell, but one thing is certain," further commenting that being with Kane could be hard work. Paul Secour, Solano County's Chief Deputy District Attorney, stated, "I don't believe you will ever find closure. In all my years as an investigator and advocate, I have yet to see families come to terms with their pasts fully. However, justice will eventually come. For now at least, it gives families relief that someone is being held accountable." On February 16, 1979, Monica Pritchett was born in Anniston, Alabama. She had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and she was the daughter of Donald and Dorothy Pritchett. After being married, Monica lived in Heflin, Alabama, with her high school lover, Jeremy Rollins. Up to the birth of their second son, Aaron, their marriage was stable. The couple chose to live apart for reasons they never disclosed. This was true even though Monica was expecting their 3rd child. Midway through 2001, Monica and the boys moved into their house on Sugar Hill Road. Every other weekend, Rollins could still see his 2 sons under visitation rights. Monica cherished her kids very much. Aaron was 2 years old, and Dalton was 6. In just a few weeks, her 3rd kid will arrive, and she was quite excited about it. Monica was going to name him. With 2 boys to raise and a full-time job to manage, Shane was a busy mother. Up until July 2002, she was employed at Kitty Castle Daycare. On Friday, September 13, 2002, she decided to take a higher-paying position at ITC Deltacom. Monica went to see her father, Donald, with her sons. After working at his Anniston house, Pritchett was finally able to offer his oldest grandson, Dalton, a gift. A Dalton filly by the name of Mojave was the present. At 8:30 p.m., the evening consisted of dinner games, horseback riding, and chat. Monica returned to their Heflin house with the boys. Later that weekend, they intended to come back and spend more time with Monica's father and his spouse. But after the weekend went by with no word from Monica, family members made the decision to visit her and make sure everything was all right when they showed up at her mobile home on Monday, September 16. They could not have been prepared for what they were about to discover. Inside their house, Monica and 6-year-old Dalton had been brutally murdered. Monica appeared to have gone into labor due to shock during the incident. The infant was discovered not breathing and only partially delivered. Aaron, age 2, was discovered hiding in a closet, alive and unhurt. On the same day that the discovery was made, a relative dialed 911. At approximately 6 p.m., Monica's ex-husband left Southwire after his 12-hour shift and headed home. When the police showed up at his house a few hours later, they informed him of what had occurred. Officials said they requested him to come to the police station. After being cleared out as a possible suspect right away, Jeremy Rollins cooperated with the inquiry. Jeremy expressed his feelings after being ruled out and learning what had occurred to Monica and Dalton. It was astounding. According to early press accounts, stab wounds sustained at some point throughout the weekend claimed the lives of Monica and Dalton. When you live in a tiny town with less than 300-500 residents, you pretty much know everyone. Heflin is among those communities where a horrific triple homicide shakes the community's core, particularly when the victims included a young mother carrying her unborn child, her 6-year-old son, and the perpetrator. The community was so afraid of this incident that people strengthened their home security and stayed indoors with their children. According to family members, Monica is a kind, patient mother who is terrific with children and always smiles. Debbie Clark, the director and owner of Kitty Castle, described her as a kind person who was constantly grinning. A young boy was really valuable. On September 19, 2002, funeral services were held in the chapel of Dryden Funeral Home for both Monica and Dalton. They were scheduled to be buried in Cedar Creek Cemetery, but first investigators felt they had to. Governor Siegelman announced on September 20, 2002, a $10,000 prize for information leading to the capture and conviction of the person responsible for this horrific crime. There were not many information released concerning the killing. The Heflin Police Department used the information as a tactic for their investigation, even years later. They thought that eventually the murderer would say something about the never-publicized killing, which would cause unrest. Of investigation verified that additional evidence, including DNA fingerprints, had not been gathered at the site and was forwarded to the Alabama Department of Forensic Science for examination. Processing was delayed at the time because the department was dealing with severe backlog problems brought on by financial restrictions. The Attorney General's Cold Case Unit was approached by Heflin Police Chief A.J. Benefield in June 2014, and new information led to the two authorities collaborating on the case. They resumed interviewing people, held meetings with the local prosecutors and the State Bureau of Investigation, and initiated fresh conversations. Officers at the time of the killings, Chief Benefield held the rank of officer. When a relative discovered Monica and her son's bodies, they called 911, and he and his partner responded. In 2014, Benefield said the following on the case. So really, there were 3 victims. The crime scene was the worst I had ever seen. Every day that passes, we are discussing this or working on it in some capacity. It is quite meaningful to us. Benefield made a vague suggestion in 2015 that they were considering someone they had known since 2002, but he did not provide any other details. The Alabama Attorney General's office joined the investigative authorities in March 2015, and they have since made repeated posts on social media requesting further details about the matter. Sadly, no helpful leads were received, and the case was abandoned for a while. Captain Scott Bonner and Chief McGlone reopened the case in 2021. They kept in regular contact with some of the family members and did their best to offer comfort, even though they were unable to share specifics because of the continuing investigation. They also sent numerous things to state and private forensic labs. According to Captain Scott Bonner, there is evidence and a suspect in this case, but at this point, the person poses no threat to anyone. My unidentified suspect is incarcerated in a different state for unrelated offenses. He said that investigators were able to apprehend Louis Landon Spivey on June 26, 2023, more than 20 years after the murder, and charged with killing Shane and Monica Dalton. They did this with the aid of state grant money from Seasons of Justice and an actual truckload of evidence. The announcement was made public by the Heflin Police Department on June 30, 2023. It was a dark secret that Louis Spivey held to himself until his release from prison in Florida. When he did that horrible crime in 2002, he was 18 years old. He is currently 39 years old. They knew each other. They were romantically involved, according to Captain Bonner during a press conference. Bonner withheld the reason behind the killings as well as their prelude. Louis Spivey was sentenced in February 2010 for an unrelated robbery and aggravated assault case out of Bay County, and he has been incarcerated in a Florida prison cell for the past 15 years. Louis Spivey was taken into custody by Captain Bonner and Chief McLean upon his release from the Florida prison. Louis Spivey has subsequently assisted with the investigation, according to Captain Bonner. Before we launched the case, he was examined by other agencies early in the inquiry. Our investigation work produced several excellent leads. Bonner claimed that neither cameras nor surveillance photos were there. The things that you would have now were not available to us. Louis Spivey is said to have provided investigators with a comprehensive confession, accepted full responsibility for the killings, and described the incident. June 29, 2023 was the day of the bail hearing. After finding that the requirements for applying Anaya's statute had been satisfied, the court kept Louis Spivey in pretrial detention without the option of posting bond. Legislation honoring Anaya Blanchard, a college student whose life was cruelly lost in 2019, is known as Anaya's Law. Judges may refuse to grant bail or parole under the bill, which attempts to toughen penalties for some serious crimes in Alabama. The law aims to prioritize public safety and protect prospective victims by keeping people deemed dangerous off the streets during legal processes for those charged with certain violent offenses and guaranteeing that they remain in custody throughout their trial process. Few specifics were provided by detectives regarding the circumstances that led to the case's break-in, but we do know of the confession, the department's receipt of a grant for DNA analysis, and the processing of many items by Canadian state and private labs in a statement on behalf of Mayor Robbie Brown. The family of Monica and Dalton received condolences from Chief Ross McGlone. With any luck, this will help you put a stop to this terrible phase of your life. Captain Bonner, the Heflin Police Department, and all the other organizations and people that showed steadfast dedication and tenacity in their quest of justice for Monica Dalton and her bereaved family, have our sincere gratitude and respect. That was undoubtedly the most difficult case I have worked on in my career, Nevertheless, as the investigator and Captain Scott Bonner described, the box of reports and everything we had to go through took many months on its own. Bonner said that this case had grown personal to him and that he had likely spent more time with Monica and Dalton's family than with his own during the previous 3 years. He added, "I feel great that I can give them some peace." Ingrid Rollins, 2011, saw Monica's ex-husband remarry, and he and his new spouse have twin girls. Aaron Clayton. After completing high school in 2018, Monica's second son is currently in his early 20s. The family still calls Heflin home. After being sent to the Cleburne County Jail, Louis Spivey is currently being held without bond while he awaits trial. Taryn Pad entered El Champ food store in Orlando, Florida, between 5 to 6 a.m. to prepare for his shift as an employee and was attacked by an unknown attacker, being stabbed multiple times while working the store. Since he had recently relocated there and worked long shifts, he did not have many acquaintances. Therefore, police quickly exhausted every lead they could in an effort to solve this crime and arrest those responsible, finding those responsible for Terrence's brutal death in 2003. After reviewing evidence at the crime scene and searching for new leads in their investigation, a DNA profile developed from these evidence exclusions were made. However, no culprit was ever identified, and thus the case became cold. Until October 2019, when Orange County Sheriff's Office hired Florida Department of Law Enforcement as helpers in their probe. They collaborated with AM to utilize latest DNA tests for genealogy building. AM used forensic-grade genome sequencing to generate leads that led to the identification of suspects in Taryn Pett's investigation, using genealogical clues provided by AM and using it as part of their forensic genetic genealogy system to create an exhaustive genetic profile for potential suspects that would trigger it. After successfully creating this profile, AM provided it to police, who then utilized genealogical research techniques in order to identify potential suspects who could have been activated by it. They verified his identity as 54-year-old Eustace Kenneth Robert Stowe Jr., who remains detained without bail as part of Taryn Pett's investigation. Kenneth Stowe Jr. was found guilty of first-degree murder and robbery with firearm in August 2023 and awaits sentencing. Carrie Ann Cummings was a 25-year-old transient living in Eureka, California in 1997. Carrie was admitted to an institution for mental illness treatment, yet decided not to stay. Even when family members begged Carrie to go back home, she refused their pleas and refused their treatment plans. Family was informed that she planned on staying in Eugene, Oregon for some time. They tried contacting her but failed. Eventually, they went to authorities to file a missing persons case as well as hire an investigator. Kathy claimed she was informed by Carrie's sister that Carrie had reached the age of adulthood, making the choice to live her own life without immediate threat to herself or anyone else, with no immediate decision-makers available to intervene on her behalf. The sister also provided this insight regarding her attempts to locate Jane Doe over time. As internet use increased, I began searching sites in case I'd lost her, and searching images that referenced Jane Doe's tattoos. 1 year after Carrie Ann disappeared, Wayne Adam Ford entered a police station in Eureka and found his long-lost love, who would later be known as Carrie Ann. Wayne Adam Ford entered an open seat. California Ford admitted to killing 4 women, but did not know their names. However, 3 have since been identified. Tina Renee Gibbs was born April 20, 1972. Tragically, she passed away near Las Vegas on May 16, 1998. Her body was later located on June 2 near Buttonwillow. Lynette Dion, age 25, was found dead in Fontana and executed on September 25, 1998 in Ontario, California, before being interred near Loy Patricia and Thomas, age 29. HPUA located her body as her remains were discovered inside an aqueduct located in San Bernardino on October 23, 1998. However, one female was unidentified at this time. Investigators spoke with Ford and collected descriptive details about this person. As part of their investigation, detectives conducted a search at Ford's camp, using DNA to identify more remains from bodies discovered there by duck hunters near Eureka in October 1997. when his body part had first been brought there. Detectives were then able to link what Ford brought into the encampment with one discovered there by duck hunters from that month, October. Authorities discovered Ford's additional remains at Clam Beach in January 1998, 9 months prior to his death and within his encampment. DNA samples were run through California Lost Persons Database, as well as the National DNA Unidentified Person Index without success. No matches to Ford's profile could be found in either database. 8 years after being charged with murdering her son, Ford was sentenced to life imprisonment at San Quentin State Prison. Investigators know who was responsible but do not yet have information regarding who the victim may have been. This investigation stands out in that neither party knows whose side it was on. William Hunnell had created the Cold Case Unit specifically to review Humboldt County Sheriff's Office case files to discover new leads, with OAM, a forensic genealogy lab, as their partner to use advanced DNA tests for forensics to help identify an unknown female or close relatives using DNA forensic syncing. They then created identity profiles of anyone they suspected could possibly be close by, creating family trees until eventually finding the connection they needed to solve the case. Detectives contacted an intimate relative of a female who went missing in late 1990 and received confirmation from them that this extended family member had gone missing from her life. They contacted Carrie Ann Cummings' sister, Kathy, who was believed to have gone missing. Kathy provided investigators with her DNA sample, which they then compared against that from unidentified female remains taken 25 years prior. Kathy could recall Carrie having an attractive facial structure. She was hilarious, smart, and an artist. Creating laughter through comedy was her specialty. However, mental illness can wreak unimaginable damage within 2 years of diagnosis and treatment. Sheriff William Hansel applauded his team, noting in a statement that while no words can bring back lost loved ones, this recognition could bring closure for both their family members and members of the local community. I am immensely appreciative of our investigators who never gave up searching for answers to cases still outstanding. It has been reported that Humboldt County Coroner's Division is in the process of releasing the remains of a caregiver, so she may be interred alongside family members.